Hello and welcome to the MSL Learn series. I'm Dhawal Ashar, civil engineer and transport planner working with the World Resources Institute in India under the Bloomberg Philanthropies Initiative for Global Road Safety. Since the last 5 years, we've been working very closely with MCGM in trying to improve road safety on the streets of Mumbai. So as many of you already know, the Mumbai Streets Lab was launched as a competition by the former Honorable Municipal Commissioner in September 2019. This competition in its first phase was launched to facilitate the transformation of 5 important streets in Mumbai using the creative experience and expertise of urban designers in the city. Uh, the Mumbai Street Lab competition and its winning entries were well recognized and acknowledged by the Honorable Chief Minister. And when he visited the exhibition for the Mumbai Street Lab, he asked for the initiative to be scaled up to several streets across the city. So the municipal commissioner, the honorable former municipal commissioner, guided this initiative throughout. There were several exhibitions and several rounds of discussions, technical reviews that were held with the engineers, traffic police, ward officers, to be able to better contextualize the design and make it more practical for implementation. So, what is MSL Learn? Mumbai Streets Lab Learn series is an online capacity building session specially designed for MCGM engineers. Unfortunately, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we are all not able to get into an in class capacity building session where we could work together and plan how we can improve design on streets and intersections in Mumbai, right? So, this capacity building session will hopefully allow us to still continue to learn on how to improve safety and accessibility. We will, through the series MSL Learn series, try to demonstrate best practices in how to improve safety, accessibility in Mumbai. MSL Learn series is comprising of 5 modules. Each modules are going to be 15 to 20 minutes each. They will be sent to you in the form of a YouTube video where you could view the module as and when time permits. And at the end of the video, you will get a quiz that you will have to take. It'll be a very short, simple quiz, at the end of which you will get a certificate for attending the MSL Learn series. Right. So the first module in MSL Learn series is called Mumbai Mobility or Mayhem. In this module, what we will do is we will go back into the last 20 years, the last 2 decades, and study the state of urban transport in Mumbai. We will critically assess main events that change the transport scenario in Mumbai, and we will try to draw learnings for the future, right? Okay, so since the year 1999, Mumbai witnessed the growth of over 60 flyovers, a Bandra-Worli Sea Link, several freeways, including JVLR and then the JVLR and SCLR. 2009, the year the iconic Bandra-Worli Sea Link was inaugurated. This was a much celebrated project for all of Mumbai and also promised to solve congestion problem at once. However, 11 years down, what we notice is that of the 15 million trips that all of Mumbaikars make on a daily basis, the Bandra-Worli Sea Link serves a mere 50,000 odd trips every day. And we see a huge queue on both ends of the sea link when there is high traffic also. The situation is not very different on the other expressways that we've built in the last 20 years. In doing so, what we've done also is we've spent about 20,000 odd crores in building all of these mass infrastructure projects. If we assume a humble annual maintenance cost of 10 to 25%, we're still talking about 2,000 to 5,000 crores in maintenance each year. This is more than budgets of several small municipal corporations in the country. But what did we get in return is represented in this image here that I think all of us have experienced many times in our commute in Mumbai, right? Uh, so, what we just saw, the building of these flyovers, etc., was the supply that we created over the last 20 years. Let's take a step back and understand what the demand was while we created this supply. Uh, to estimate demand, or to kind of come up with an accurate, or as accurate as we can get, figure for demand, there are two sources that we can use. The first is the comprehensive traffic and transportation study that was done for the entire region in 2005 to 2008. And the second is the comprehensive mobility plan that was prepared only for MCGM in the year 2014. We hear that the comprehensive traffic and transportation study for the region is now up for updation, but the report is not public yet. So let's work with these two sources right now. According to the comprehensive mobility plan for MCGM limits in the year 2014, the estimate was that about 46% of all trips that happen in the city happen by walking. Now, I've been using the word trip very often. You may wonder what is a trip? A trip in transport planning terms is simply defined as somebody going from point A to point B with a purpose. That is what we classify. So if you were to go from point B to point A again, that would account as another trip. Now let's look at what the motorized modal split, what the mode split was for the Greater Mumbai in the comprehensive mobility plan. If you keep aside 46% of walk trips and look at all the motorized trips, about 35% of those trips, sort of the trips, happen by public transport, be it buses, suburban rail, metro, monorail, and only 19% happen by cars and two-wheelers. Of the 19%, 8.7% of these trips happen by the IPT, or the intermediate public transit, which is taxis and auto rickshaws. Since then, Ubers and Olas have grown, so the number here is also obviously grown. And only about 9.1% of trips happen by private vehicles. Of the 9.1%, about 5.3% are trips that happen by private automobile, or let's say private cars, on the streets of Mumbai on daily basis. Now, what is also interesting to note is that of all the trips that happen by suburban rail, over 60% of those that access the suburban rail access by walking. Now, more roads creates more demand. This is something that is fairly well established through research now. So let's just look at what is some evidence in this claim. This is Los Angeles. This is an Interstate 405 in Los Angeles. It is the equivalent of our national highway, or let's say in the case of Mumbai, a Western Express highway. This interstate cuts across the city of Los Angeles. Los Angeles is very infamous for its car traffic. So therefore, city planners decided to spend $1 billion and double the number of lanes on the Interstate 405 passing through Los Angeles. What happened though as a result was, in about 5 years, the traffic became slower than what it was before. This is not something that is unique to Interstate 405 in Los Angeles. We have witnessed the exact same phenomenon on Western Express Highway in Mumbai. When all the flyovers were built on Western Express Highway, it promised a signal-free travel from Dahisar until Bandra. But what we now witness in the peak hour is speeds that are in 7 to 9 kilometers per hour during the peak hour. And this is the section that is very close to the airport, where a tunnel was also built, and we thought sort of the traffic will get much better here. But again, we are talking at single digit average speeds in the peak hour. Now, so if there is anything that we need to learn from the last 20 years, it is that it is most important that we focus on a paradigm shift. Now, what is this paradigm shift, you may ask? I mean, the paradigm shift is, just very simply put, it is from planning to move cars to planning for moving people. Simple, right? I mean, it is important that people get from their origins to their destination, right? I mean, and not just cars. If we plan for cars, we'll just end up creating more roads. And we've done that in the last 20 years. What did it bring us? Is just more car traffic. This paradigm shift is more important now than ever. especially in the back of COVID-19 pandemic, where we are going to see higher densities affecting the risk of transmission of the virus, assuming that we have to live with the virus for some time. So this paradigm shift is very important, and it's happening. It's happening across the world. While we kind of took the route that we just saw in Mumbai, many cities across the world saw new trends emerging. So those trends may be car sharing, bike sharing, complete streets, low emission zones, bus rapid transit systems, car free zones even emerged in the last 20 years. Some of these trends obviously have emerged in Indian cities as well. How successful or not is a matter of debate. uh, but the fact is that we have a lot to learn from other cities in the developing world, that is available to us. So and it's interesting that a new generation is bringing this along. I mean, in the last decade, in the US and in the United States and the United Kingdom, both known for a massive car population, the percentage of licensed drivers in the younger age in the last decade was lesser than ever before. So this is sort of a fairly encouraging sign for more sustainable transport. Now, how can we bring this paradigm shift in Mumbai? And more importantly, is what is the role that you can play in doing so? In the next sort of few minutes, and in the modules following that, we will deep dive into this aspect, and we will see how you can, as MCGM engineers working on roads and traffic, play a very important role in bringing about this paradigm shift. So, let's look at some principles of traffic engineering that were used before, or maybe they are actually even used right now. These are very simple principles of traffic engineering that every traffic engineer or every traffic engineering consultant will actually use to propose changes. So what used to happen before, or even to an extent happens now, is let's just imagine a network of streets. Imagine this to be any network of streets. In the very early days, when there is not that much traffic, every street performed as a two-way street. Every junction was an open junction, was an uncontrolled junction, and it was believed that vehicles would navigate their way somehow safely. Now, as years go by and as traffic increases, the junctions start choking up, right? The junctions start choking up. So what do we do next is we signalize the junction. Once you signalize the junction, you can move the traffic fairly conveniently across your network, right? Now, as traffic further increases, the next thing that we would do is we would just make the street a one way. What does this one way do to us is that it doubles the capacity of the street. So if you could move 100 cars in one section of the street or on a link before, making one way just makes it 200 cars, right? So we made it a one way, but it didn't stop there. As traffic increases more and more, what would we do next is we would just build a flyover. So the flyover is now going to triple the capacity of that street. But what happens when the traffic increases and jams the flyover even? Now, what are we going to do now? Right? I mean, there are a few options ahead of us. One option is to probably build another level of flyover or a different set of flyovers. We've seen what we saw in the last 20 years, right? Making streets after streets after streets. What is it going to do? It is only going to add more traffic. Or what we could do is look at engineering a mode shift. So remember the paradigm shift that we suggested that we really need. We need a paradigm shift, we also need a new agenda for the streets of Mumbai. We need this agenda to be based on different principles, to be based on principles that allow for movement of people, that allow for increasing capacity to move people and not just move vehicles. So what are these principles that I'm talking about? So the first principle is called complete the network. How do you do that? Is by first building the missing links. The argument isn't whether we need urban roads or not in Indian cities, because we most definitely do. The real question is, how should we build them within the cities? Take for example this part here between Andheri and Oshiwara, which is about 5 kilometers, and the 2 million odd people that live in this portion of the city. If these people have to access a large part of the city, they will have to cut across the railway line to be able to access the remaining part of the city, right? Uh, in this regard, it is most important that we have a lot more east-west connectors. Mumbai, as we all know, is spliced into 4 different parts by the 3 railway lines that cut across the Mumbai in a north-south direction. So the comprehensive mobility plan, in fact, also suggests or has studied several missing links. You know, the focus on building roads has to start with completing the network so that we don't repeat the same trips on each and every link that could have otherwise just gone through another link that is missing. So complete the network is important. The second principle is called multiply the network capacity. What do I mean by this is, I mean, adding roads actually also multiplies capacity, right? But it multiplies capacity for movement of cars. What we need to, in the new paradigm, focus on moving more people, correct? So in the short term, we need to improve signal coordination. We understand that travel patterns are different at different times of the day. If we improve signal coordination and optimize movement, we will be able to move more people through definitely more vehicles in this case, but it will be more people that will be able to move more optimally. We have to ensure contiguous lane widths. What is contiguous lane widths? Imagine a street that is 2 plus 2 lanes, right? Imagine the entire entire length of that street. Contiguous means that the street has to remain 2 plus 2 lanes in active vehicle movement for that entire lane. If there is anything that hinders the movement of hinders the carriageway width and makes it lesser than 2 lanes, that is the pain point that we have to find a way to address. And the third is obviously managing on-street parking. Parking is the biggest subsidy that we can offer right now on the streets of Mumbai. Uh, Parking also obviously takes up carriageway capacity that could have otherwise been used to serve several different functions on the street. We have to be able to find a way to manage on-street parking in Mumbai. This is Mexico City. This is a concept that I'm sure most of you are aware, and a lot of you might even think that has probably failed in India, which is the bus rapid transit. So one would notice that, you know, I mean, the car traffic is heavily jammed, but if you count the number of people moving, the car lanes are actually moving only about 4,000 people per hour. Whereas the BRT lanes are capable of moving over 15,000 people per hour. So, you know, I mean, multiplying capacity actually calls upon us to increase lane capacity by introducing more mass transit usage or incentivizing more usage of, let's say, bus transport, so we can move more people in an hour. And the third design principle is called designing for universal access. As the word suggests, which is designed for universal access, our streets in Mumbai have to be designed for every road user that could possibly traverse the street of Mumbai. Be it cars, be it motorcycles, be it pedestrians, be it any person with any kind of disability, our streets have to be able to design for every road user, and it's possible. This third principle is we're calling it the sub 40/40 principle. What we mean by that is every street ideally should be less than 40 kilometers per hour and less than 40 meters wide. Why 40 kilometers per hour? Is there is a very clear research that is out there that says that at 30 kilometers per hour, if a pedestrian or cyclist is hit, there is a 10% likelihood of fatality, which means there is a 90% chance that that person will survive. At 40 kilometers per hour, if a pedestrian or cyclist is hit by a vehicle, there is a 30% likelihood of fatality or a 70% chance of survival. But the moment it goes up to 50 kilometers per hour, the chance of survival is barely 15%. There is an 85% chance that that pedestrian or cyclist crash will result into a fatality. This means that as speeds go up, the likelihood of a fatal or a much serious crash increases exponentially. Um, why is this important in Mumbai is that in the last several years, just go to the last 15 years even and look at crash data, over 50% of all those that are dying on the streets of Mumbai in road traffic fatalities are pedestrians. So it's very important to think about speed in that as a critical measure to prevent pedestrian fatalities. Design for universal access. How do we do it in Mumbai? Before how do we do it? This photograph actually addresses the question of whether we can do it or not. This is LBS mark. This used to be LBS mark before actually. On the left, what you see is a carriageway, is a concrete carriageway, which is mostly used by vehicles to traverse. On the right, you see a side strip and then a bus stop, a footpath, and an active edge with shops, etc. The entire portion that is on the right of the carriageway is a portion that lends itself for repurposing, lends itself for better utilization. What we will learn in the modules that follow this module will be how do we transform this section of the street or something that looks like this into something that looks like this. This may seem very ambitious. This may seem very impossible in Mumbai context. You know, other cities can do it, but Mumbai is different. We will use examples from Mumbai from our last 5 years and demonstrate that there is enough space and there is enough potential to be able to safely transform our existing streets. So, you know, the upcoming modules, they will focus, like I said, mainly on this third principle, which is how do you design for universal access in Mumbai. The module that will follow this module will talk in detail about the role of design in improving not just traffic safety, but also vehicular efficiency. The module after that will take us in detail into how we can design intersections better and safer in Mumbai's contexts. After that, we will look at how we can design corridors using certain key principles, and we will look at some of the best practices in that. The last module that we will share with you is called COVID responsive streets. This is not to say that any principle that we have learned right now is not going to respond to the COVID pandemic in terms of design. COVID responsive streets, however, will mainly also give you an insight into how streets across the world, cities across the world have used COVID-19 pandemic and how they have responded to that in terms of street design or several different initiatives. In your messages, you will also have a link to a Google link that will take you to a quiz. Finishing that will give you a certificate for this module. I urge everyone to please do that. And with that, I thank you everyone for listening to this module, and I hope this is useful.